Welcome to Strength in the Numbers. My name is Andrew Codd, accountant, author, and commercial finance entrepreneur, and it's my job each week to bring you leaders in finance and business and deconstruct with them their real stories, insights, and hard-won lessons into practical advice on the key strengths and qualities you need to remain relevant in accounting and finance today, as well as the steps you can begin to take to elevate the impact you make to have a fun, successful, and rewarding career in accounting and finance. Now let's go over to the show.
I don't know if you read the book From Good to Great from Jim Collins, right? So he has this idea of the hedgehog concept, which says great businesses are at an intersection of what they're passionate about, what they're very, very good at doing and executing, and what the market is willing to pay for it, right? And I apply it to myself. And I think it's a good framework to apply to one's career, because I think that I always try to identify if I'm passionate about something, and I'm really, really passionate about that, if I'm good at it, or how can I become better at it, and if there is a market for it. So if the company or an organization needs it and it's part of their agenda. And I always try to question myself, am I positioned in the intersection of these three circles so that I can add value? Otherwise, if I don't, my career is over, or will be over in 2-3 years, or I won't be relevant in the future.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Strength in the Numbers show. Now today I'm talking with Riccardo Calliano, and what's great about having Riccardo on the show is finally I get to share with you the type of conversations we've been having over the last couple of years, but also that Riccardo's one of the few finance professionals who's actually qualified to comment on how we in finance can support our organisations and communities during the current COVID-19 pandemic, as he himself was a finance director based out of Mexico City when the swine flu epidemic hit, and that city of 20 million people was put on lockdown by the government. So Riccardo shares with us the learnings he had as a finance director at that time and what he and his team did to get through it. But also, Riccardo has an impeccable career. He spent the last 18 years in the pharmaceutical and healthcare industry. He's lived and worked across 7 different countries in Europe, North and Central America, Asia. He's now based out of the UK. And, we get an insight in this podcast of some of the exceptional skill sets he's developed in finance partnering, leading customer intelligence units, his Lean Six Sigma black belt and the importance of that, being a P2P process owner, business process outsourcing, being CFO and VP Finance for China, and also, leading the finance team of a global supply chain. Beyond all that, what I'm most interested in talking to Riccardo about was some of our shared passions around developing the right capabilities in finance so we can remain relevant. The importance of building optionality. We go through the hedgehog concept and how it can be applied to our careers, and also how we can carve out time and develop new capabilities. And Riccardo shares an example of how he learned how to code Python to bust this myth of learning and show how we can all do this. So look, as you probably can tell, I really enjoyed catching up again with Riccardo, and I hope you enjoy it too. And if you would like to check out the detailed show notes, key quotes, resources that Riccardo mentions, and much more, you can find that at our website at sitnshow.com. And of course, always appreciate when you recommend the show to your friends and your colleagues. We're on all the major platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, YouTube and Spotify. And really appreciate investing your time with us today. So without further ado, over to Riccardo and the show. So Riccardo, welcome to the show.
Hello, Andy. Thanks a lot for the invitation. Really happy to be here.
Hey, I'm delighted to be able to bring you on and share you with our audience, and I've really enjoyed our conversations over the last couple of years, and really appreciated them. But our audience may not be as familiar with sort of your story, your journey in accounting finance. So would you mind maybe briefly summarising that for us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I start from my current job. I currently have a very interesting and unusual job. So I'm the head of finance, global finance capabilities and talent here at GSK GlaxoSmithKline, so pharmaceutical industry. And I currently work across the finance organization to drive the new capability agenda, actually drive the different talent programs we have in finance, looking at the new capabilities we need to develop and the new ways of working as the function is evolving and transforming. And as for me, how did I get there? So as you probably get from the accent, I'm Italian, and I started to to work in the automotive industry. So 5 years, Fiat. This is my hometown company actually, and I worked there in corporate FP&A and strategic business planning. And then I left. I did my MBA at INSEAD, and I joined the pharmaceutical industry. I've been working 18 years now in the pharmaceutical industry, different finance jobs. I lived and worked across 7 countries in Europe, North America, Central America, and Asia, and now based in the UK. And in terms of experiences, I started from finance partnering, FP&A. Then I moved to lead a customer intelligence unit based in Switzerland for the whole European region. I've been Six Sigma Black Belt, purchase to pay process owner. I led the BPO implementation across Europe. Then I became finance director of Mexico. Then I changed the company and I went to become the vice president finance for China, Hong Kong, the commercial business. Then I moved and became head of finance for one large business unit in the United States. And then again, vice president manufacturing for the finance for all the manufacturing sites, global manufacturing sites, and then now into this job. So I worked across always finance, different parts of business, bit commercial, manufacturing, process improvement. That's who I am actually.
Yeah, you know what? There's, I think it's great having you on, Riccardo. I'm delighted you shared that with our audience because there's so many questions we could ask you. So I'm going to do my best to ask the best ones, and there's always an opportunity in for audience to see if they wanted to continue the conversation with you as well. But you mentioned you work on farm at the moment. It wouldn't be, I suppose, the right thing to do to skip on the big topic at the moment for those of us living through it, the outbreak of COVID-19 coronavirus. You work in the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, sort of what are your thoughts on how we in finance can help support our organizations, our communities, those around us through it?
It's a very challenging moment and a peculiar moment. I think it's probably your first podcast being recorded during pandemic, right?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Yeah,
hopefully. So I can share my experience. I think it's one of my. I think the moment that stands out in my career. I was the finance director of Mexico in 2009, which for people who don't remember was the swine flu epidemic that hit Mexico very, very badly. So I lived there and I was head of finance during the lockdown of Mexico City, 20 plus million people. Things that you now see in Italy were basically put in place by the Mexican government quite quickly. And we triggered the pandemic plan, which many companies have. They probably don't look at it. BCP and pandemic plan. The first time in my life, I had to work with the management team to trigger a pandemic plan. And frankly, I think it's all about planning, executing with thoughtfully, with calm and focus. And at the time, I remember where we deployed all the resources in IT to make sure that people could work remotely. School were closed, shops, entertainment, as you see in other places now in Europe. And then only few people who needed to be in the office came to the office. And it happened that we were in the midst of a big product launch. And so I talked to my team and said, look, I need to be here. Who wants to help me? We really need to drive that. And large majority of the team actually decided to come and to help. And I remember we were taking precautionary measures. So we're measuring temperature of people as we're entering the building. We were working with protective masks, and we launched the product. And it was a fantastic human experience. We were helping each other. He talked about teamwork, dedication, resilience. It was a very successful launch, very positive, and an unforgettable experience in a way. And from the epidemic perspective, measure the government of Mexico put in place actually managed to stop the evolution of the virus quite quickly. So it was like few weeks of uncertainty, what is happening, lockdown, etc. But that was very effective. So the learnings for me are, let's follow government guidelines. Let's try to not to panic, because I think there's measures, and then we've been through that epidemic, SARS and other epidemics, and all stick together, help each other, be mindful of precautionary measures, etc. And after that, I still remember that somebody took a picture of us standing in front of these billboards for the new product launch, etc., etc., with protective masks, smiling and cheering, etc. And then a few months down the road, when everything was finished, I remember I was in the US, and I met the CFO at the time. I said, Riccardo, I saw your picture with your team in Mexico. Fantastic. Many people saw it. This is great. Great teamwork, etc., etc. So a great learning experience. And I will say the learning for me is all of these measures are necessary. We should follow them. We shouldn't panic. And, everything will be managed appropriately. But of course, in the midst of it, it's tough. And then my thoughts and prayer are going for all the healthcare professionals who are doing a fantastic job, for all the people who are affected, who are sick at the moment. And I think we should also follow this rule to avoid put extra strain on them, because they are the one who are suffering the most. So.
Yeah, I think very well put, Riccardo, and I echo your sentiments as well. I think we mustn't forget those healthcare workers on the front line, providing support to our families and communities as well, and do our best to support them. And I think, as you said, following the government guidelines. And there was I'm going to paraphrase from a very famous statesman. I think you should never waste a good crisis. At the time, we're probably in very much reactive mode, but as you said, it does bring out good qualities like resilience, like teamwork. Brings our skills to the fore as well in finance around BCP, business continuity
Absolutely.
planning,
Risk
that full
management.
visibility. We have risk management, so it's times to sometimes take a deep breath and just realize we've been trained to deal with these things, and really appreciate you sharing your experiences with us as well. And also the funny bit about the picture as well. I think that's
still have it somewhere.
I was going to say, yeah, you probably still have it somewhere, yeah. So let's look at moving from sort of the now back in time. You've done a tremendous range of roles. And like you've got many different experiences in finance. I suppose what sort of maybe stand out to you? Obviously, the swine flu one must be quite memorable. Any other sort of memories or memorable experience you had in finance that you particularly enjoyed and recall?
Yeah, I think so. Many of them, and I fondly remember all the teams I managed throughout my career, because for me, people are really the core of what I believe into, what I do, and the core of a great finance team, right? But I think in terms of aha moment, there was a moment that taught me how building your skill set for the future is more important than the immediate appeal of the next job.
Yeah.
And that moment came actually when I after my customer intelligence job, process improvement, finance partner, etc. I was waiting to land the coveted finance director role for small market, which is like the big stepping stone of any finance career. And at the time, I was offered actually the regional process owner for purchase to pay Europe. And we're talking like 15 years ago, right? So it was the beginning of streamlining processes, SAP implementation with standard processes. It was not considered as fancy or as interesting as the finance director job of smaller market. And I was like debating with myself and say, okay, should I accept that or should I wait longer to get the opportunity? And then I remember my manager at the time saying, Riccardo, process improvement, process standardization, rationalization is going to become more and more important. Think it through, of course, and make your choice. And I said, you know what? I think this job will teach me skills that I haven't learned in other jobs, will actually expand my skill set. And I'm willing to do it. And actually, there was a big agenda on process standardization, cost per transaction reduction, putting in place web invoicing, I was also managing a virtual team, which at the time was a little bit
Yeah,
new
completely.
and again not really sexy, because I was having these people reporting to the finance director of the markets, dotted line to me to drive a standardization. So also in terms of matrix environment and how to manage it was
Yes.
pretty challenging. And I took it and I say, I think it's great. So new skill set, interesting. And it turned out to be a great choice. First of all, because I learned a huge amount of things. And then because the company, my previous company at the time, a year later decided to go for business process outsourcing globally. And then guess what? The largest process they wanted to outsource was purchase to pay. And I already had a team. I had the expertise. So the company told me, you're going to do it for Europe. So you're responsible for the project for the whole Europe. And there was a huge project, really great learning experience. I already had a very good relationship with my team, which became central to the implementation of that. So it turned out to be a fantastic choice. So it really taught me that, your immediate next job, at least for me, shouldn't be your immediate concern. I think is what you're building for the long term in terms of skills and capabilities, what is helping your career advance.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for sharing that great advice, Riccardo. Like, I just feel that I suppose it's so easy in our work to get sucked into the reactive nature of what we do. You know, responding to requests for information, that we sometimes forget to maybe think a bit ahead from our own careers and sort of think, okay, what's the right strategic path to take to the next step and the one beyond. And those skills you were sort of mentioning that you sort of pick up as being in the team, the matrix relationships, virtual. Getting probably ahead of the curve around the business process outsourcing.
Yep.
And reducing transaction costs. Those things we sort of take for granted now. But that must have been a big shift for you outside of your comfort zone. I mean, how did you get your head around that and take on that challenge and be successful at it and get offered the next role? I mean, how did you manage pushing yourself outside your comfort zone?
So look, there's something is related to my personality. I love challenges. I thrive learning new things, and I thrive being out of my comfort zone. So that's what I love. And I also really always enjoyed managing teams and cross-cultural teams across different culture and people. I really love it. And that helped me because it was a sizable part of the job. Then I needed to learn and to get into more depth on all the, processes, controls around that, the accounting side of it, the technology side of it, which was a big one. And I started. This is one of I love learning, so I started to talk to people, sit down and watch what they were doing, asking for information, and I learned at the same time. And it was a successful experience. And also I built on my previous experience, which was the Six Sigma Black Belt job. And that was another choice I made, because at the time, after my customer intelligence job, I had the opportunity to change my career and go into like sales marketing route that some people in finance take. And I was offered a bigger job with a promotion. And I decided to go for process improvement in Six Sigma. And at the time, again, the company was just launching it. It was like, and again, it was like 16, 17 years ago, launching it as a Lean Sigma program. It wasn't unclear how impactful it would have been. It was a little bit uncertain. I said, look, I think I like finance. And I like to understand how things work and they can be made better. And I think it's a great opportunity. Let's go and do it. And that skill set translated very well into the process owner job, and that the process owner job skill set translated very well in the BPO job. So that's how I happened to make my career choice, and it turned out to be coherent, probably exposed.
Exposed.
Because I always look for skills and capabilities that make you valuable for the future. And my deep belief is that if you build optionality, you will be better off in the future, even if you don't know your job, because your next job in 5 years might not even exist now.
Well,
So
that's it. There was it the Institute of the Future was saying what 85% of the jobs in 5 years' time haven't even been created yet. So
absolutely.
like, if you do what you said there is do you have develop skills that have optionality, and importantly as well, whilst we're sort of young and figuring this out, is also finding out what things you enjoy doing, and getting a feel for what you can do best at, and understanding that, because I just can't help but feel that given where we are in our teams and whatever, we can sort of help direct what those jobs might look like, because they're the ones that will drive additional value for our businesses. So whether the phase is business process outsourcing at one stage, or it's working more closely with sales from a partnering perspective, or it's some visualization introduction or something. There's loads of these opportunities, Riccardo, and it's, as you said, the skills, the capabilities, and I just want to sort of go deeper into that with you because of your sort of current, how do you say, interest in capabilities. I mean, for the modern finance professional, if we're to have meaningful, successful, rewarding careers in finance and deliver value for the business and those around us, I mean, what sort of those optionalities or capabilities should we be looking to develop?
Yeah, so I think I will start. I will start a step earlier, if you don't mind. And I think that there's a concept that stuck with me for a long, long, long time that I try to apply to my daily job. And it is, I don't know if you read the book From Good to Great from
Oh
Jim
yes,
Collins,
yes,
right? So
yes.
he has this idea of the hedgehog concept, which says great businesses are at an intersection of what they're passionate about, what they're very, very good at doing and executing, and what the market is willing to pay for it, right? And I apply it to myself. And I think it's a good framework to apply to one's career, because I think that I always try to identify if I'm passionate about something, and I'm really, really passionate about that, if I'm good at it, or how can I become better at it, and if there is a market for it. So if the company or an organization needs it and it's part of their agenda. And I always try to question myself, am I positioned in the intersection of these three circles so that I can add value?
That's
Otherwise,
great.
if I don't, my career is over, or will be over in 2-3 years, or I won't be relevant in the future. So that's one thing. And thinking about that, I think that now there is a big. So the two things that excites me a lot about the evolution of finance, and I think the two areas that many people should start to look at are the massive impact that digital data and
Yes.
analytics is going to have on our function, right?
Yeah.
And
Huge.
you can take it two ways. One is it's a threat. My expertise is going to be replaced by machine. It's going to wait, or an opportunity, right? And I
Yeah. Yeah.
always look at the opportunity, because I do see a big opportunity, because if you have automation and digital and data taking away the basic reporting side, taking away the transactional side, and bringing you data sets and tools that you can use to generate insight, this is where really you can add value. The generation of insight and translation into action for the business is something that I think machine cannot reproduce, at least for the moment. So
Yeah.
for me, it would be shifting from doing reports and analysis in Excel into how do I generate analytics and insights that are relevant for the business, and how do I communicate them effectively. That would be, for me, the biggest area to focus on. And then that can translate into building your capabilities in areas like understanding data, understanding BI tools, understanding how you use analytics to generate insights, maybe a little bit of stats, a bit of other techniques. If you're really into that, and crazy like myself, I started 8 months ago to take Python classes, coding classes, on my own time, on my own budget, right?
Yes.
And because I want to see how things develop, and I want to experience it myself.
Yeah.
And I saw the huge power of manipulating data sets in a very quick and efficient way, and
Oh,
how that
Python's great.
can be used to generate new things. And then I moved and I started to use Power BI, and myself develop report on Power BI. Then I realized that you need to have a good database. So I started to learn SQL, and then I created my SQL. And now I'm using it in my current job
It's
on
great. Yeah.
capabilities, because for me it's a way of learning. And I see the huge potential of it. I'm not suggesting that everybody should go this crazy path, etc. But what I'm suggesting is the tech organization provides the platform,
Yes.
how can I say, the rules, the access, and the security to a world. They're not providing you with insights, with anything else. So it's your job as a finance professional to go and get them. And there's no better way to do it yourself and to experiment and to see what you can do with that. And then I think that then you will move ahead of a curve compared to other people.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. First off, Python is useful, particularly if you do what like I did a project with my son on this where we used it to make a retro arcade machine using Python.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So that's the fun side of it, but the serious work side of it is that it can actually be rather useful in this day and age. That experimentation, figuring out what works. You mentioned, in effect, the databases, SQL, Power BI, great tools. But the thing is, Riccardo, like you're in a senior finance position, right? And you're finding the time to do this. I mean, I think a lot of our audience listening think, where am I going to get the time to develop all of these skills? And is it a case of, well, if you don't do it, you're relevant, so like there's a huge cost to not doing it, or is it a case of, well, actually it is something we should be able to accommodate now? I mean, do you have sort of any advice of how to carve out time to go and do this sort of stuff?
Yeah, so it's a very good point, and it's a point that comes up many times in my conversation with people. I'm too busy, I don't have enough time, etc., etc. So I'd like to propose my own interpretation of that. This is my interpretation. I think that we leave actually a lot of opportunities aside because we have a myth about learning. This myth is that you need to invest, you you lock yourself up in a room for 3 months, just to study books, and then you come up and you know things, right?
Yeah,
So this is not how I experience learning, and this is not my practice. So people might take it or leave it. Everybody has the different path. For me, um, learning is a continuous activity that I do
yeah,
every day, almost like jogging and going to the gym, etc. So what I do actually, and this is how I learn Python. It's not a 3 months lock yourself up exercise, but it's it's basically so there's another big enabler for that is that we do have access to micro-sized learnings, short videos, so all the learnings you now have online, you can have it on your mobile, are actually thought to be used into 5-minute batches, etc., etc. So what I do every day, I I started to watch a couple of videos on a train coming to the office or in my spare moment, 5 minutes or 10 minutes on a topic. And then once in the morning, once in the evening, 20 minutes per day, right? It doesn't look like massive investment of your time. So if you do 20 minutes per day, you do it, let's say 6 days a week. Because for me, I enjoy it. Like it's like 2 hours per week. Okay. And then it's like more than 2 hours per week, more than 8 hours per month. So you do it over and over and you learn, right? And when you start to reach a certain level, then you put it in practice. That's why I started to manipulate different data sets we needed to use for our capabilities project using Python, because I wanted to put it in practice. And then I will keep learning and doing things in parallel. And this is how we learn. So this is how I learned foreign languages in the past. This is how I normally learn. And I feel that if you see learning as an essential and day-to-day activity, almost like a health check activity, you just part of who you are and how you work. So that's my perspective, at least.
I think that's great advice for audience. I think we can all find 5 minutes or 10 minutes here and there if we're deliberate about it.
Yeah.
And over the course of weeks and months, that adds up. And then even better, what you suggested there is that applied practical learning. So have a business context or objective you're looking to help solve, and apply what you're learning to it, and learn from that. And then you're taking that learning, and it's not as if you're taking your time away from your job. You're actually applying it back to the business. So it's that win-win. You've identified and found for us, Riccardo. I think that's That's really awesome advice. I suppose if I was to sort of to ask you in turn, then Riccardo, from an advice perspective, I mean, what's been the best bit of advice you've ever received?
Look, there's something that stuck with me, and then it's related to what I've been mentioning just right now. So I remember my first boss was a Frenchman, very smart. So I remember that after a few days, I was in the company. It was a very senior person. I was new out of university, etc. And he told me, Riccardo, never stop learning and being curious. When you feel that you're not learning anymore, it's time to change your job and look for another opportunity. And that's been probably the best advice I ever had, because changing job or looking for an opportunity might be two different things. Like you might want to expand your current job, you might want to add additional things. I'm not just suggesting that people should change job every,
Yeah.
but find the opportunity to expand it so that you can learn new things and you can be current, fresh, and relevant. And I always try to apply to what I'm doing, knowing that for some jobs you need experience, you need need a certain tenure in the job to really make an impact, but always look for new things you can learn and keep that enthusiasm alive, because that drives your passion. At least for me, that's the case.
Yeah, I think it's great advice. It's one thing, sort of being curious, but it's also that having that enthusiasm and energy to build momentum as well. So fantastic advice there, Riccardo. And you mentioned Good to Great earlier. Would you have any other recommended resources our listeners could go check out?
Yeah, so there's a couple of books. One is a bit old, but that I think are interesting. One actually was kind of instrumental for me to jump from my Mexico job into the China job, change company, etc., which was another weird move in a way. And it was, you probably remember that The World is Flat from Thomas Friedman. There was like I still remember I was in Mexico. I was reading this book. It was talking
Yeah.
about globalization, ways of working, becoming being disrupted, the emergence of Asia, the emergence of China, and everything, etc., etc. And I was fascinated about that. And I said, I need to go there and experience that and do this. So for me, it was a great book. I think probably it's less relevant because we're already seeing what's happening, but
Yeah.
that was historically an interesting book. So there's a book, I think it's a fascinating, so if I love reading, but there's a book that I think is fascinating for people in finance or accountants specifically, who wants to see the impact of data and analytics on their job. There's this book, they also made the movie Moneyball from Michael Lewis.
Oh,
So Michael Lewis is a
yeah, very
great
good.
writer. I love it. So for
Oh,
finance
great
people, it
writer.
should be
Yeah,
the writer, right? So
definitely. Yeah.
yeah, probably people that watch the movie with Brad Pitt, and it's a great movie. But it's fantastic because it tells you how statistics, which is the backbone of machine learning, actually, statistic and data started to change the world of sports. And the story is a true story of the Oakland baseball team, who hired a statistician that started to use data to basically, fetch the best players at the lowest cost with the best statistics, etc., and actually, have a very, very successful season because of that, without budget and with challenges, etc., etc. And I think it shows you the transformational power of data if you use it very well, and the impact can have on a business. Now, if you look at sports, now data and analytics have impacted a lot of, how people train, how performance is measured, etc. So I think it's a good reminder for people in finance of what can happen, and also the opportunities you can get from that.
Oh God, yeah, that's great recommendations, Ricardo. So we'll add those to the show notes as well. And also, if our audience wish to continue the conversation, where's the best place to connect with you at?
I think LinkedIn is great. So contact me, send me a message over there, and absolutely, I happy to have conversation, be in contact. That would be great.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Ricardo, thank you for that. And look, I suppose just as summarising, I mean, thank you for sort of painting a picture and taking us through it, and what sounds to be an amazing career with loads of fantastic experiences, and also breaking down some of the advice, particularly around the current situation we're having with the flu pandemic worldwide, and giving some reassurance there, but also the sort of capabilities, and particularly around digital finance, that we're going to have to be more aware of, and keeping that curiosity around learning. But before we sort of wrap up, would you have maybe any other parting thoughts for our audience?
So what I would say is we're living in a period of big transformation in general, but in finance in particular. So my advice would be curious and be open-minded and throw yourself into it. See, experiment, see the opportunities, fail and learn from your mistakes, and embrace the opportunity. There's two ways it can go, right? You can resist and might become irrelevant in 5-10 years from now, or you can look at the opportunities and even create your new job that doesn't exist now. I think it's up to you, it's up to all of us to get into that with the right mindset. And so somebody was mentioning in an article I was reading, so think about Excel, right? Excel was a revolutionary tool that basically threatened the existence of people who were doing, manual plotting, manual T accounts, calculation, etc., etc. It was a revolutionary. It was the same, probably not the same impact, but a scale of change was massive, right? But it generated, more data, more analysis, new jobs, more opportunities, etc. So I think that we're probably on the cusp of something similar, if not bigger. And again, I think it's important to look out for what are the skills and the opportunity in the space, and start to invest in that, start to play with it, start to work in that space, start to volunteer for projects and see what happens there. So nobody has, in my experience and reading and talking to people, nobody has a crystal ball to predict which job will be available in 5 years, right?
Not really.
Yeah, but it also means that the future is not set, so that you can create and chart your path, which I think is great.
And because it's not set, the time is now. This is the time to be doing that experimentation.
Absolutely.
You're completely right. So Riccardo, look, it's a pleasure to finally be able to share one of our conversations with our audience. So thank you for coming on the show today, being an awesome guest mentor for us.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and thanks for inviting me here, and then to all the audience, fantastic audience you have.
So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to know more about our guests today, their bio, and follow up on the resources mentioned during the show, you can find all the relevant links and more at sitnshow.com. There you'll also be able to get access to earlier shows, read the latest blogs. There's also an opportunity to subscribe to our newsletter, which will give you heads up as to when the next show is coming out, latest events, news, and anything that's going to be relevant to help you have a fun, rewarding and successful career in finance and accounting. And just before you go, we really appreciate your feedback. If there's something we can do better on the show, something that's not working, or something you'd like to see, even a guest you'd like for us to invite onto the show, someone who you think might be able to benefit you more and also the rest of our community, please let me know. You can email me. I'm at andrew@sitnshow.com, or feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Just drop me a message so I know how you found me and we can connect. And really, it's our community that'll make the show. If we keep engaging and driving each other on, we'll keep on building our strength in the numbers. When all is said and done, if we can do the numbers better and finance better, we'll create more opportunities for ourselves, our friends, our families, our communities and our businesses. So until next time, have a good rest of the week, take care, and let's keep building our strength in the numbers.